I'd like to welcome my special guest today, Karen Palmer. Um, she has a remarkable story of transformation. She has released 160 pounds and has gained a whole new life. And it has inspired her to become a health coach herself. And she just has a remarkable story, and I thought I would like to share it with her, with you. So, Karen, one of the things that's to me always been amazing, well, not amazing, but our stories, not only do we have the same first name
Yes.
and we're about the same age,
Mhm.
but we also have a very similar story as far as our history with weight and body image and dieting. So, do you want to just give us a little story about, the before time and your history of your relationship with food and how you kind of came to a point where you knew that you wanted to make some real serious changes?
I'd be delighted. And Karen, thank you for this opportunity. You've been a very special person in my life, and I'll need to highlight that in my story, of course. So, my first acknowledgement in my own mind that I did not care for my body was in kindergarten. It was the first day of kindergarten. My mom sent me off to school, and I was scared about that. But then I also happened to be wearing this outfit that's sort of an A-frame outfit. And I believe some kids teased me about being overweight or fat or whatever. And from then on, that is the image I had of my body. I was fat, I was ugly. And that continued on. And so at 10 years old, I joined Weight Watchers. Back when they were just kind of, they'd only been around a few years. And I can't believe they let me in. I went without my mom didn't know about it. My dad didn't know about it. I just went and started the diet mentality right there and
Yeah.
then, my first diet. And diet mentality for me was you restrict your eating, you take away all the yummy foods, and you only eat basically the non-flavored foods. And you do that for a certain limited time, and then you're done.
Mhm.
And then magically your weight has come off and you're ready to go back to whatever eating you were,
Whatever. Yeah.
right? It kind of doesn't make sense. And I did this over and over again. And in as a teenager, I went on a liquid diet that put me in the hospital. And they, basically I just didn't have the nutrition from that. They did not formulate those things effectively back then, or with any quality. And yet I continued to try many, I'm going to say maybe over 40 different approaches, diets, all the gamut, from Atkins to paleo to South Beach to veganism to, I mean, it just the entire plethora of commercial plans and best-selling books. And so, okay, so that was my life up till 58 years old. Um, and I had the opportunity to go to Kripalu. And I went to see Janine Roth, who presented, she wrote the book, God, Women and Food, or
Human
something.
food and God.
God, I knew that I would get the order wrong there. There, it was about a different approach to eating, which was more of a
Mhm.
mindful eating approach, intuitive eating approach. And I gained a lot of insight from that. And yet I knew that I would not be able to keep going with what I had learned because I knew myself. I knew that when I got back into life, life would take over and I'd lose some of this insight. I'd maybe go good for a couple of weeks and then a couple of weeks. So I met this woman named Karen Steiner there.
Yes,
And
and disclaimer alert, I'm the Karen Steiner you met.
yes, to be clear, this is the Karen Steiner I met, and we had lunch together at Kripalu, and Karen just mentioned that she did coaching, and I thought, what a good idea. Have someone assist me in this journey. And I had a sense this was the journey I needed to take, that I finally found something that wasn't diet mentality, that, quite a bit different. So we started our journey in October of 2018, and we continued that for about 20 months, or 20 weeks. No, wait,
I think it was 18
no,
months.
18, yeah.
It was a year and a half.
Yeah, I thought it was about 20. I thought it was about
Okay,
20.
well,
You're a little more. I don't know. Up till June. It was October and then we ended in June. I don't know.
okay, so it was 20.
Yeah. So at that brought me on a whole different path. So first, Karen, as you remember, we tackled just eating when hungry, right? And then
Can I interject something here?
yes,
I think
certainly.
because one of the things, I mean, first of all, you were you just absolutely hated exercise.
Well, I was going to
Oh,
get to
you
that.
were
That was
going
the
to,
next thing.
and I think that, well, okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of you. You were going to talk about that.
No, I'm glad you brought it
Oh,
up.
I guess the other thing I wanted to say is at that point, if I would have put a diet in front of you
Right.
and said, you got to follow this and eat this way, what would your reaction have been?
Same old, same old.
Yeah.
And I knew the results of that. The results would have been the results I'd had many, many, many times of losing a little, failing at that because I'd go back to my old habits and gaining more weight than I had started with. That
Yeah.
was the diet approach, and that just did not work. So I would have said, oh, well, I guess I misplaced my trust and goodbye. So it's good you didn't do that.
Okay.
And I know that, that's what's unique about your approach. So me too.
Okay.
Anyway, so let's
Eat when
talk
you're
about,
hungry and stop when you've had
okay,
enough.
so
And that's also Janine's
that's Janine. So we started with Janine's
centerpiece.
principles basically, but you had a little editing of those principles.
Yeah. I'm a little different than Janine.
A little different. And one of the edits was extremely important to me. And that is, I really couldn't just eat intuitively what I thought I wanted. I needed to look at addiction.
Mhm.
And you pointed that out. You said, what is your alcoholic food? Meaning, what's the food that alcoholics would traditionally say, I can't have alcohol? What is the food that triggers you to eat more and more and not, one is too much and 1,000 is not enough.
Right.
And so I started that road.
And what was your first reaction when I suggested that?
I didn't want to give up my chocolate. I had these Ghirardelli chocolates, and I thought I was so clever because I was breaking up into little squares and thinking just one, just one. And, and I was doing that. I didn't want to give up cheese. I didn't, there were foods that I thought I could manage. But then as time went on, I realized, oh, wait a minute. I notice I'm now eating more of those and more of those and more of those. And I'm not still satisfied.
Yes.
I'm not satisfied.
And I think that's where the mindful eating
Yeah,
piece is so powerful.
exactly. Exactly. So I was really becoming aware. There's just really tuned into my body. And I also was realizing my body's been supporting me pretty darn well all my life, even when
Mm,
I used it. So I started, I think, appreciating my body and not hating it, and also really understanding that it's not about how I look, but how I feel. And I
right.
was starting to feel more energy. I was losing weight with your coaching. I then, and then there was the time when I didn't, and I gained
Where's the
a lot of
pothole in the road of life?
exactly. It was the same cycle of lose and gain, except I didn't give up, except I didn't stop. I knew that this was a learning experience. So what happened? And primarily, I think it was those addictive foods that were getting in the way. So
Mhm.
I finally let them go. Finally let them go. I do not consider that restriction. I consider that not eating poison.
It's liberation.
Yeah, it's right. And I eat a lot of food. Let me tell you, I eat a lot of
Mhm.
food because you also help me get on the path of looking at whole foods versus processed foods. Whole foods give you so much more nourishment
Mhm.
and so much more satiation that and because of the caloric level being so low and the nutrition level being so high, I could eat a lot. I could eat a big salad. I could eat a whole big bowl of soup. I could eat, fruit and all that. Um, and food became more delicious. That
And you can eat carbs.
I can carbs. Carbs is a really bad. Um, it's gotten a bad rep out there.
Oh, it has terrible.
Yeah, and carbs are different. They're different carbs. And the
Right.
carbs I was avoiding were the refined ones, the
Okay. Yes.
flour, the sugar. Um, and you take out flour and sugar, you really are left with whole food. You're really, because all processed food, salt, flour, sugar. So I don't eliminate salt entirely because it's so low now with unprocessed food that
Right.
I don't have to, I can salt my food, but I really stay away still. And it's been a long time, many years now. Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, a good 4 years. Um, I'm without sugar and not I'm talking about refined sugar treats,
Right.
the donuts, the cookies, the cakes. They are not in my food. I do not eat those, and I don't miss them. I
Yeah.
don't miss them at all.
So how
And
do you negotiate going out to restaurants with friends and things like that?
I just was in Turkey, and I explained to the tour guide I would not be eating sugar or flour, so please help interpret to the all the restaurateurs and so on that I do not eat those. He was very good about that. But the
How
other
about
people,
meat?
meat I have meat.
Oh,
I
you
have,
eat some
I
meat?
have a
Okay.
little, I eat some meat. I do. Not a lot. I'm still whole food plant-based, but I eat a little bit of meat.
Okay.
And I was willing to sample some of the Turkish foods.
Okay.
Um, and I don't, but not a lot. Primarily vegetables, and they noticed I eat a lot of vegetables. So the group asked me about this, and what I said to them is, I have a addiction to certain foods, and I just said that, and they accepted it. And I went, so I'm very honest and open about it. If I don't want to talk about it, I don't. But if someone can be helped by it, I like to let people know, this is another way, is to avoid those foods that trigger me and be able to eat this plethora of delicious food. My taste buds have changed. You've talked to me
Yeah.
about that. My taste buds have totally changed. I completely relish and love the sweetness from fruit now. And I believe, I haven't tried it, but if I dug into highly refined, sugary, hyper palatable foods again, I think I would not like them. Do you remember the Butterfinger?
I was just going to ask you about the Butterfingers. I
Okay.
tell that story with, I'll tell you, I tell it with Karen's permission.
Yes.
And so, yes, tell us the Butterfinger story.
So in the journey of mindful eating, Karen had me do this exercise of eating my food that was not so healthy while really mindfully eating it, very present to it, very, tuned in to how this was feeling in my mouth, in my body. And I did that with Butterfinger was my candy of choice. And so I was eating this Butterfinger with that.
Can I interject here in this story? That vending machine was like not right outside your office door, but really close.
It was available.
And it was available and you were making several trips to the
Several a day
a
at my
day.
workplace.
Yes.
Yep.
So, yes. So I had, instead of white knuckling it and going, I wanted you to dive into it.
Yep, I
And
did.
that seems totally counterintuitive, but
It does, doesn't it? Like, go ahead and eat that Butterfinger then, but eat it mindfully. That's the trick. So I did. So I'm eating this Butterfinger, and I'm recognizing that there's this weird sort of icky taste in the back of my throat, and it's actually harsh and sort of hurting my throat and not pleasant, not pleasant at all. And I thought, what? I don't actually like this thing. I don't know why, why am I eating? I mean, this is actually adversive.
yeah,
This
it's
is an adversive
like they put in
chemical.
so much sugar to cover up the chemical
I,
taste.
I guess. And it hit me so harshly in the back of my throat that I said, well, that's it with that. I'm done. No more Butterfingers. They're icky. They're disgusting.
And how
Um,
many times had you tried to avoid the Butterfingers before?
Well, as many as I've been on diets,
Yeah.
so over and over again. So, and if it wasn't Butterfingers, it was donuts. And if it wasn't donuts, it was something else. I'd have little, things and that were my favorites. And I've eaten in 6 donuts from a 20-minute trip from my workplace to my home in the car and stuff
Mhm.
them in and be done so that my dad didn't see that I had donuts that I brought home, so it's
Yeah.
a little hiding thing that you do, right? So all of this, that is the answer of my history with my relationship with food. And food was constantly on my mind, whether it's going on the next diet, or where can I get my next hit, or how can I hide this so that I can eat more and people won't know that I'm actually eating this. All of that took incredible mental energy and tremendous psychological energy and demoralization, of course.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about exercise.
Okay.
And because you hated exercising, like
To
you
the
would
point
get
that
nauseous when you thought about
I was
exercise.
going to say I had a reaction of becoming nauseous, like literally physically nauseous. And when Karen brought up exercise, I was like, oh, Karen, you just don't know that and so in examining it, it goes back to my childhood when I was picked last for teams in gym. So humiliated. I was not a coordinated person. I did not perform well athletically, and it was just so hurtful and it lived with me, in sadness. And so when exercise was the last thing I wanted to do. And so I think that we did a number of different things that you tried with
And you
me.
resented every one of them.
did I was not an easy coaching client at
But
that.
what was the turning point for you? What made it different?
So I think that you introduced me to Strong Women, the book Strong
Strong
Women,
women stay young.
Stay Young. And the way the book was presented, there was a very easy start to that approach. It was really a matter of lifting legs from a chair, and I think at that time, I also had an ankle operation and a hip operation and was, hip replacement, and was doing some physical therapy at some point in our journey. So I was getting started with at least some movement, at
Mhm.
least some movement. And um, that, I think the answer is small, tiny, 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 tiny start. That didn't scare me, that was doable, and very, very doable, and building from there, versus saying, okay, now I'm going to get on the treadmill and I'm going to go, this many minutes, and I'm going to do that 3 days a week, and I'm going to, so I had to start very, very small, very small. And now I will tell you that I do a consistent yoga practice every morning, 30 minutes. And I do at least a half hour of cardio. So that's either hiking or the treadmill, which I now do, or I'm using resistance bands as well for strength training. And I can't go a day without, if I do go a day without exercise, it feels like I'm missing something, like something just isn't right. Yeah. So it's a pretty drastic change.
Yeah, but it's great. And I love to hear it because a lot of, you're made a lot of the transitions that I made
Yes.
because, it's the same thing. I hated exercise. So one of the things that, because this is ongoing, I mean, we work together, but we haven't been together since like the spring of 2020, I think, the June of 2020.
Right.
Um, so it's been over 3 years and you've maintained everything. And I guess before we get into your own coaching that you're doing, I'd like to talk about, because one of the things I've been talking about in my vlog has been the potholes in the road of life.
Yeah.
And what I try to do is put a system in place for people so that when you hit one of those potholes, you're not going to go too far off of your healthy eating. And if you do, you can get right back on again.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Um,
that's the key.
so
Mhm.
what I want to ask you is, how do you navigate? What kind, have you hit any potholes, and how have you navigated them?
Sure. I think I could tell you the recent one was the death of my dad, which was March 5th of
Mhm.
this year. And what that did was, it sent me to the, going to the hospital and having meals at the hospital, which were surprisingly not that healthy, really. Or the choices weren't, but I chose to, then soon finding out that that wasn't going to be an option that was really good for me. Um, Despite all the stress and the down feelings I was having as my dad was declining in health, and the writing was on the wall that he would be passing. I had built up enough of a daily routine, daily habits, daily fortifications like meditation,
Mhm.
like exercise, like support, getting some friends on board that were my best friend, who is on the same journey with me, thank goodness, and is, when I helped her with some of these things that I was doing, she took to it, and after a year later, And now is where I am, is over 100 pounds lower in weight, and exercising and doing and moving and functioning in life so much better. So I got support. I got daily practices beyond just preparing food and so forth. Um, Spiritually, I know that I'm a very open spiritual person. I'm not in any particular religion orientation, but I do look at the mystery of life and the more profound things in life are and do inspirational readings. So I've built this kind of support platform to live my life, and if that goes down, then I'm in trouble. That's where keeping
Mhm.
that strong, that's I think what has made the difference. If I find myself hiding from people or being ashamed because I had something or whatever that I didn't think I should have had, um then I'm in trouble. So it's not isolating, not it's reaching out for support. It's reaching out to nourish myself in many other ways besides food. And that's how, in my coaching practice, I really emphasize that it is about nourishing your whole life, not just the plate. It's not
Right.
just about the plate. So when I do go off a bit, the answer is to get right back on the next minute. Like not even before your next meal, you just get the head back,
Mhm.
like, okay. And I'm very compassionate with myself. I'm very gentle. I know how hard this is. I know how far I've come. I also know I don't want to go back, but
Right.
I just forgive myself and I say, okay, it happened. Move on. Next meal, do it even more. Be as healthy as you can be in the next meal, and let it go. Let it go. That was
Right.
my
Don't
problem
beat yourself
before.
up.
No. My problem before was that once I got off, I thought, well, that's the end of this. Guess I'll wait for the next diet
Yeah.
idea to come along. This one isn't working for me. And I don't do that anymore. I'm on the journey. I started the journey with you. It's not ended, no matter what pitfalls I've run into.
Okay. So my next question for you is, I learned a lot from Janine Roth, but of course I made some edits and I'm not, I work a little differently. So
Yes.
how do you work differently from me? What?
Okay. So I do have some differences.
Mhm.
One is that I have continued to educate myself and research some other people that are consistent with the path you've put me on with Whole Foods and so forth. And I've gotten to know Dr. Furman, Dr. Greger. You have told me these are good people, and I've really do appreciate their insights. And Dr. Furman introduced me to the Food Revolution, and that introduced me to some other people. Food Revolution is plant-based
Mhm.
seminars. And I have also met Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson, who is the founder of BLE, Bright Line Eating.
Mhm.
I got into her program, and it is consistent with the whole addiction element. And so I became a little bit even more um, structured, maybe is the word, with looking at it at my addiction. And some of the tools that I've learned from that program are to write my foods down. And I think that's different than what you would suggest. Maybe. I don't know.
Actually, I've started with some clients. I've
Okay.
started not like one of those things where you have to measure everything and
Right. No.
write down,
Right.
But what I actually have had some clients do is you take a notebook and fold a sheet over in half. And then
Oh,
on one side, you write down the foods, and on the other side, you have a little journal and how you were feeling and what time you ate and what the circumstances were. And
oh,
in
that's
that case, if someone is diabetic, they also can
yeah.
put down the time that they check their blood sugar and what it was.
Oh,
So
that's
they
good.
can see how
Oh,
the
that's
foods are
oh,
affecting the blood sugar.
I
But
stand corrected.
well, you know what? This is the thing. I think both of us, we're both learning new things all the time. And our
Right.
coaching evolves. I mean, and if a good coach is going to do that. So,
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, but the other trick is that I write it down the night before. And the reason I do that,
hmm,
and this is a bright line eating tool, the reason is so that the next day I have no decisions to make. I have
okay.
none. I don't have to think about food at all.
So you come up with a food plan, in
I
other
do.
words.
I do. And I do have some ideas of measurement for things like fats
Oh, yeah.
and things like even fruits and protein can they're I can I my sense of portion is not really very astute or acute. It really
Mm,
does need some boundaries. It needs some boundaries. So I do maybe a little more measurement than perhaps than would be the intuitive eating approach. But that's just because I know myself. I know that I can think that this is a tablespoon when it's actually 3 or 4
yeah.
tablespoons, and that's my eyes just aren't good
Yeah.
measurers.
I think those are also our food addict eyes. That,
Yeah, I think so. I think so. So I will say, I just qualify this. I don't think everyone is a food addict
right.
who is overweight. I happen to be just a particularly severe case. So I
Actually, I think most people are food addicts, even people who are not overweight.
that actually that's very true. Some people can be if they have the mentality of that. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. That's I do agree. I do agree that you can see someone that's very thin, but they are constantly thinking about food.
Yeah. Well, my class, Breaking the Food Seduction, one mindful bite at a time, about half the people who come to the class are really not overweight.
Right,
You know,
right,
and
right.
typical American, maybe they could stand to lose a few pounds, but it's not like they were seriously obese.
Yeah,
But
just right.
and because it's really people who feel out of control with food.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It is. That is really what it's about. And
yeah,
so the one might start a program, and I did, thinking I wanted to lose weight, but what I've gotten is peace. That's so much even more valuable. Peace of mind, lack of thought of food between meals. Amazing. And
yeah,
now I can live my life. Now I can just live my life between meals. And so I do. That's one thing is I write my foods down the night before so that it's just so automatic then the next day. And I also the other thing I know you do have you put video out on this is batch cooking.
yes,
Um, and I really appreciate that. Just for my busy schedule, I take my Saturdays and I prepare my food for the week, a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it. And that's very helpful. I eat 3 meals a day and I do not snack. I don't snack. If I snack, I mean, if I truly am hungry, but you know what, I haven't really run into that where I feel like I'm starving, that I have to. I mean, if I did,
mm,
I would eat, if it was I would consider that a medical issue if I was having, starting to faint or whatever. That hasn't happened. The reason I don't is that my idea of a snack is something that you might keep going on, and I just
yeah,
don't, it's not something really good for me to have not to not have to have that free space of, ooh, I can just have a snack now. Open the refrigerator. What do I want? What's going to make me feel great right now? I also I don't want to deal with life with food. I
Yeah.
don't want to deal with problems with food.
Do
I don't,
you keep your environment clean enough that when you go to the refrigerator and say, "Oh, what could I eat right now?" there really is nothing to eat? Or
yeah,
do you actually have a few things around that you could if you wanted to?
okay. Yes and no. I am living alone now. I was living with my dad, and he had things that were not things I ate. So my environment was not clean at that point. Now I have because he is not here, I do have that freedom living alone. However, I can overeat on healthy food.
Mhm.
Yep,
Yeah,
I can do
it is
that.
possible.
Yep. So I'm aware of that, and I'm careful. I'm careful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the reason I had asked that is because there have been times that I've gone into the kitchen and I've kind of looked around. It's like, oh, I want something to eat, but there is nothing, and I have to remind myself that's by design. Because
Helpful, yes.
if I had a box of cereal, cold, I would be sitting there with my and this is after all the work I've done.
Yeah.
I would still be sitting there with my fist in the box eating. So
Oh, I don't think this ends.
no, it doesn't.
Afraid to tell people that. I don't think this ends. My brain is
Um,
brain, you know?
I think one of the things that one of my eating guidelines is get real about your addiction, and just like an alcoholic, you know,
Yeah.
even though our tastes have changed,
Right.
I think that because the human palate we are hardwired to crave fat, sugar, and salt, that if we started eating hyperpalatable foods again, like French fries and, sugary cookies and that kind of thing, the taste for them would come right back.
Absolutely. I have
So
no
it's not about moderating. And that's, I think, the thing that we deal with as coaches, of getting people to understand, because there's this mindset, everything in moderation.
it's
I
very
can
jumping
have just a tiny little piece of cheese, because if I don't, then I'm going to crave it too much.
Yeah.
And the fact is that tiny little piece of cheese is making you crave it more.
So true. So I do believe that it's unfortunately helped by many so-called experts in the field of food addiction, even food addiction, um,
Mhm.
and doctors and other health coaches, other approaches. In fact, the vast majority that I read out there, as I read things, is that approach of, don't restrict yourself too much, or, you will overeat as a result. There's some truth to that now, but here's the distinction. If you limit your eating to these tiny, tiny little portions, which many diets actually advocate, tiny, tiny little portions of things, because they include high calorie, low nutrition substances. So you really
And
can't,
highly palatable.
and highly palatable. So they include that. So you only can have these little tiny portions. If you do that, yeah, that's in my mind, that's restriction.
Mhm.
Eat tiny portions. I eat big portions
Right.
because I can. I love volume of food. And so in my mind, I am not restricting. And I believe that little tiny portion idea is. Um, and on the other hand, in terms of the highly palatable foods, we know about the food industry, right?
Mhm.
They have people called flavorists. who work very hard to help us reach the bliss point. And they do this through chemicals. And they get there, right? They know they get there. They know our palates. And so you really are at such a disadvantage if you say moderation, and you've got flavorists out there sending you these foods that are highly like that just hijack your brain, totally hijack it. There's no defense. There's no defense. There's no moderation for those
No
foods.
white knuckling in the world is gonna make that go away.
Win. We will not win.
Yeah.
This won't. And it's very sad because it's spreading to around the world. I saw that when I was overseas. Terrible. Yeah.
So yeah, we're kind of over time, but is there any last thoughts? Do you want to share any slides or
just quickly share my screen. Yeah.
So that's how you can get in touch with Karen, and I will put her email and her website in the description box.
Very good. My initials there mean I'm an integrative nutrition health coach, certified. I wanted to also show you my before picture. This was a picture I found that was just before, I believe, or not too long before I started coaching with Karen in October 2018. And then this is me in Turkey in the spring of this year. As you see, I am climbing a quite high mountain. And this is with terrible ankle injury and hip replacement and so forth. But that's the Mediterranean in the background. And what a joy to be able to do these things.
And in that before picture, you had a cane and you didn't think you were ever going to be able to walk without it.
You know, I didn't notice it was the cane there.
No, it wasn't. I'm just saying.
I was walking with a cane. I was in a wheelchair for a while too. And I always was at the grocery stores with the cart. You know, I was one of those people in the cart. So this is just a little quick. I'm not going to go into detail here, but my system is kind of taking what Karen has taught me and putting it into some clever acronyms. Prep. I start my coaching clients off with, what do you want to put in versus what do you want to take out? What do you want to put in? Then what do you want to release? And that's not just food. What do you want to release in terms of limiting beliefs, in terms of your hating your body, in terms of fear of exercise? What do you want to embrace in terms of identity? This is, I am now a person who eats whole foods. Okay, that was my new identity. Process. What now that you're embracing a new identity, how am I processing feelings? How am I processing thoughts? How am I processing decisions differently? And then doing that prep work, there are going to be some habits that need to be formed. So I've got this acronym. What's the opportunity for your habit change? What is the plan for that? When are you going to do it? Is it daily? Hopefully, because daily is the best way. Is it small? Making a plan for very tiny habits tiny steps to develop a habit. What are the tools? How are you implementing it and just actually getting to implement it? And then measuring your progress with that habit, assessing whether this is working, and then learning from it. And then that's a cycle. So each habit, you start with one, and it tends to help a lot of other things, even though you're just working on one habit. And it starts to grow in terms of its effect for your whole life. So developing habits is something that isn't emphasized a lot with it. I mean, it's said, it's included in diet programs, but how to change a habit really isn't. And I know you've done a lot of work on that, Karen, and
Yeah.
did some programs on that. So that's my little slideshow. I will stop
Great.
sharing. Oops.
Well, this has just been wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing your journey with me, with my YouTube audience. And do you have any final thoughts?
I just want to express my deepest appreciation to you, Karen. And I want to say that anyone out there who's looking for a coach that actually can make a difference in your life with your weight and everything else around that journey, please use Karen as a coach. And
Okay, well,
Karen
thank you.
Palmer or Karen Steiner, but I really want to say Karen
We've
Steiner.
got two Karens here who
That's
are
right,
coaching
right.
and slightly different.
That's
But yeah,
true. But yeah, Karen Steiner's the real deal. So
oh, thank you so much.
yeah, thank you so much, Karen.
Okay, well, thank you. And thanks to everyone for watching. And please like this video if you've learned something from it, and subscribe to my channel. And I have the information if you want to get in touch with Karen Palmer. That's all in the description box. And thanks for watching.